War elephants, famously used by the Carthaginians, and the Indians, and the Romans a few times, actually, and also the Southeast Asians. I think the Chinese might have used them once or twice too, but basically a lot of different people used war elephants. Now, you might be asking something, and that question might be, how did people train the war elephants? Well, that answer is actually something that we know. You see, alright, there's this Indian guy called Kait Iyura. I'm pretty sure I butchered that horribly. And he wrote a book called the Arthashastra. Think I mispronounced that too. Or at the very least, he was the main guy who compiled it. And it's a series that basically is about both warfare and politics, somewhat similar to some of the things Machiavelli wrote. That being said, while it is similar to some things Machiavelli wrote, I highly doubt this guy wrote a comedy book involving a Raksha or Ashura as the main character. So, moving back onto the main topic, war elephants. How do you train them? Well, their training actually starts with the selection of the elephant. Because you see, you can't just take any old elephant and make it into a war elephant. It probably wouldn't go all that well. What elephant would you need? Okay, the elephant, first off, needs to be a wild elephant, not a elephant that was raised in captivity. The reason being that, well, an elephant that's raised in captivity won't have grown up with all sorts of animals trying to kill it. It also will be, well, used to humans, and it won't necessarily have a killer instinct towards anything, though it might, but not necessarily, and chances are it'll be far more docile than a wild elephant. Male elephants are preferred to female elephants because they're larger and more aggressive, and aggression is a big part of it for warfare's purposes. Now, while they are larger and more aggressive, I also suspect another reason is because male elephants... Male elephants live alone. They leave the herd when they reach adulthood, while females stay in the herd. So it's entirely possible that they'd be easier to hunt because, well, they are alone. Or at least alone or in small groups. That being said, they didn't really seem to have entirely a problem taming female elephants, so I'm not sure about that. But moving forward, it can't just be an elephant that's wild and male. It has to have other stuff too, namely, it can't be too young or too old. If it's too old, the elephant won't be good at fighting, because, well, it's going to have all the issues of, like, old age, and it's not going to be able to fight as well as it would otherwise. Same thing with it if it's too young, and if it's too young enough, and by the time you are ready to send it out to warfare, it'll probably have acclimated to humans the same amount that any, like, elephant that was raised in captivity would have, thus making it not very useful for battle, as a general rule. So, moving on from that, let's say you find an elephant that's within the right age, that's within the... if you find an elephant that's male, that's old enough, and that is in the wild and isn't in captivity. So, how do you train it from there? Well, there are a few steps. First off, you need to get it to like and trust the guy who's going to ride on it, the mahout. The elephant needs to like the mahout and trust him because otherwise it won't actually obey any commands. It'll just, well, do whatever it wants or just cause trouble, stuff like that, so... Basically, the elephant won't do what you want it to if it doesn't like and trust its mahout. Now, that being said, there is a downside to the relationship between the elephant and its mahout. That being that the Mahout is going to be the only person the elephant actually trusts and likes. And if that person, say, is in the middle of a battle and takes an arrow to the face and dies, the elephant is going to figure it out pretty quickly. And as a result of that, well, it's going to go on a rampage and might just end up deciding to attack you, or rather to rampage through your own men. So now, in addition to liking the Mahout, you have to train the elephant to take orders. You need to train it so that the Mahout can direct it to move in certain directions, to, stop, to charge, just about everything order that you might need the elephant to actually go through with in the battlefield. So, getting orders and stuff like that. And also, you need to get the elephant used to things it will experience on the battlefield. Which brings us to today's topic, torture. Yeah, so there are two things you need to train the elephant for to get it used to battle. Those things being, pain and loud noises. For loud noises, it should be pretty obvious. You basically just play a bunch of loud noises near the elephant and to get it used to it. So you do the loud noises near the elephant until it's used to it. But what about pain? Well, look, I said torture for a reason. They would torture the elephants. In particular, what they do is they take sharp wooden stakes, aka wooden spears, and would stab the elephant with it. Not deep enough to do any permanent damage, but definitely deep enough to hurt it. Because and they keep doing this until the elephant was used to all the pain. So, yeah, that war elephants weren't exactly treated all that well in their training. Now, moving on from that. No, wait, actually, I think, yeah, that's kinda it. That's how they trained the elephants. A mixture of torture, general orders, and other stuff. That being said, there is one more topic I want to cover related to war elephants. Namely, a theory that I've seen that's basically speculation. And it's that the Carthaginians wouldn't actually ride on their war elephants. They basically just pushed them into battle. Now, where does this idea come from? Well, in simple terms, it comes from the fact that Carthaginian war elephants, or rather the ones that they trained in Carthage, weren't as big as Indian elephants. So you might be like, how can that be? Aren't African elephants bigger than Indian elephants? Well, yes and no. The main elephants that people think of as African elephants are the, African bush elephants. And they're not as big and they're bigger than the Indian elephants, but the Carthaginians used a type called the forest elephant. They aren't in North Africa anymore, and the reason why they use them is because the bush elephants were too big for even the experienced Indian mahouts to tame. So, because of this, they couldn't really do anything to tame them. So the Carthaginian war elephants would have been smaller than the Indian elephants, aside from the ones that they imported from India. So the theory goes that rather than actually riding on them, the Carthaginians would push them at the enemy. And I don't buy this theory for a few reasons. Reason one is that even if the African elephants the forest elephants are smaller than the Indian elephants, they're still bigger than horses. And if a horse can carry someone, then the elephant definitely can. Now, keep in mind that carrying humans on their backs is not good for elephants. Elephants that are used to carry people often have back problems in their old age, so it isn't good for them. That being said, if you're sending them to war, where chances are they'll get like stabbed multiple times, I don't think you really care about their about their like old age physical condition, or at the very least you think it's worth the price of the effect of them in warfare. So yeah, so I don't think they care about that. So that's thing one. They're definitely big enough to carry a human, even if it won't be good for them. Now, thing two, the second reason why I don't think that that they would have just pushed them into battle is because, well, look, because we know from our sources that the Mahouts would have had something that they could use to kill the elephant if it like went on a rampage. Now, this didn't always work, as there are plenty of cases where the elephants went on rampages and no one stopped them. So it clearly wasn't 100% effective, but they had it. And this thing was basically a sort of hammer and chisel designed to go into the back of the elephant's skull to kill it before it could collide with your own troops. What would be the point of that if the elephant was, say, not be having anyone on its back? They'd have to climb up it to get to its skull. So, no, but now you might then think, okay, so maybe then they did use them, but only for the Indian elephants, because, like, they didn't on the African elephants? Okay, well, I have one more thing of evidence that I think indicates that there were people riding on the African forest elephants. And it's simple. Elephants are not stupid. They are highly intelligent animals. And if you say, push an elephant in the general direction of several thousand people with swords and spears, do you think the elephant is going to just charge in and attack them? Or is it going to see the horde of people with swords and spears and go, oh, fuck, that's a horde of people with swords and spears. Several thousand of them. I think I'm going to leave so they don't kill me. I find it far more likely that the elephant would decide to run and just eat grass somewhere safe than that they would actually attack a horde of people that are several thousand strong just because someone pushed them in their general direction without being guided into them. And my evidence for this is that even with someone guiding them into them, the elephant didn't always attack. At the Battle of Zama, the elephants were basically tricked by the Romans, who put gaps in their formation filled with skirmishers. And when the skirmishers ran for it, the elephants went into the gaps rather than fight the Roman infantry. So if this could happen even with a Mahout on top of them, imagine what it would be like without a Mahout. The elephants would have basically just wander off and do nothing. So, yeah, that's what I had to say. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching, everyone, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe.